Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. I'm Em.
And I'm Lloyd, and we're two former corporate lawyers based in Hong Kong.
So for those of you who have been following along, we just finished watching and reacting to the Netflix series Partner Track, and if you don't know what that is, it's a show about an Asian American M&A lawyer working in New York. Although I think that we can both agree that that show was super dramatized, there were definitely still some parts of it that reminded us of our own experience working as lawyers, and it was kind of like a little trip down memory lane as a result.
Yeah. And this actually kind of got us thinking about the things that we both miss and don't miss about working as lawyers. And we kind of started talking about it, but we had the idea to maybe record this and see if there's anything of value to any of you. I actually haven't thought about this at all, so I don't even know what I'm really going to say. I have like a few ideas, but I'm really just,
okay.
Yeah, no. I think it'll come, I'll be hit with inspiration.
Okay. Do you want to go first or should I go first?
Your call, up to you.
So I think the thing that I probably miss the most is actually being told what to do.
I get that. I feel that.
So for those of you who don't know, we actually work for ourselves now, essentially, and it's a double-edged sword. I mean, I think I really enjoy not being told what to do in a way, but then as a result, it's so open-ended. So I kind of miss actually always having someone like a partner, someone senior who you could go to, and then they would tell you like, oh, do this, do that.
Yeah, it takes out the part of needing to figure out exactly what your day looks like and sort of structuring your schedule in a way that sort of works. And I think that's the hardest part about transitioning to working on things that are personal projects or just doing things for yourself. It's always that time management component that is the most difficult, right? At the same time, I think that's one of the best things, but also one of the worst things, right? Because it's like the feeling of getting an email at 10 or 11 p.m. and knowing that you need to action that email right away was always one of the worst things. And even just the idea that you could be asked to do something at any time.
Yeah. But then on the flip side now, I always feel like no one is telling us what to do, but we're just always thinking about, things we could be doing, but then there's no one telling us like, just do it next week. It doesn't need to be done like right now.
Yeah, that's a good one. In terms of what do I miss the most? So, I mean, I think there's a part of it, that's a big part of it for me. I think one of the things that I actually kind of miss, to be honest with you, is the drafting. I actually really like the drafting. This is where we kind of, I don't know how you feel about this, but...
So I think the thing is that you do actually get excited about M&A work because if any of you watched the Partner Track reaction series, I mean, at one point, I remember one video, you were like, oh, I love this. And I remember thinking, I was like, I don't agree at all.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed getting into the weeds and sort of doing drafting and working through documents and kind of figuring out the commercial side of things because I think that's actually what a lot of people sign up to be lawyers to do. Maybe in law school, you kind of got the idea that commercial lawyers do contracts and sort of are negotiating things with their clients, and that's actually a big part of the job, and that was actually really, really enjoyable. What's not so enjoyable, though, is when you're doing that from 9 a.m. until 2 or 3 a.m. for several days in a row, including weekends. I mean, that's when it starts to get too much, and a lot of times, you have the drafting part of it, but you also have all these other small things you need to do. There's this whole like deal management side of things, and that just sort of adds so many layers to it where you're not really able to comfortably enjoy doing the thought-provoking and sort of intellectually rigorous work.
So I actually had drafting as number 2, but only specific types of drafting because I've actually really always liked reading and writing. So I did actually really enjoy drafting stuff like affirmations or affidavits or witness statements. So for those of you who don't know, I used to be a disputes lawyer, meaning I did mainly contentious work like court cases or arbitrations, and I did enjoy, although I definitely didn't love drafting argumentative documents, but I think as a friend of mine who also does the same work recently explained to me, she enjoyed this part because it was kind of like storytelling, and that really resonated with me.
Yeah.
However, I think my enjoyment of writing really comes second to my enjoyment of like visual arts.
Yeah.
So that's why I could really never find that kind of satisfaction from the legal work that I did.
See, it's funny you say that because I remember when I did my dispute seat, and the drafting for me was very, very storytelling-esque, right? Because you have to sort of set out all the facts and kind of frame your client's position in a way that anyone reading it would understand why they have a case or why they've been wronged or something, why they deserve to win the litigation. And I actually didn't like that as much as drafting contracts, which are much more technical.
God, I hate drafting contracts. It's so dry. We're definitely like polar opposites in this respect.
So here's the argument for contracts, right? I think that there's a sense of satisfaction when you have a technical document that just works, right? Where it's like, okay, clause 3.1, talks about this thing, and it links to a schedule at the end of the document, and those are all sort of, they work with the definitions, and everything just kind of works, and it just makes sense. Like, no stone was left unturned. Like, for me, that's actually really enjoyable. I'm not really making a good case here, but I'm sure there are those of you out there who feel the same way. And to be honest with you, I've never been much of one to write stories and stuff, but I've always been someone that's very, I guess, grounded in logic and think about things in a systematic way, and that's what really makes me sort of feel satisfied with the work that I do. So I think that is sort of the main difference, right?
Yeah, I enjoy creative writing. So there is a bit of a creative component to like drafting argumentative documents, telling a story.
Yeah.
Yeah, contracts, not so much.
No, definitely not. Yeah. Any other honorable mentions that you think make the cut?
Not for me. Drafting was my honorable mention.
Okay, yeah. So what about the things that you dislike the most? I mean, I think you kind of covered a bit of both, but what are the things that you dislike the most? I mean, I can go first on this one because I kind of think I touched on it before a little bit, but, as much as the work might be nice and the work might be something that's intellectually satisfying, which I think is actually a big plus, I think it's a huge pro to be able to work on intellectually stimulating things. Like, I think that's actually a huge treat, right? Yeah. Like, I think that's really nice. I think that the challenge, though, is that in all professional services industries, and really any service industry, right, clients are going to want things very quickly, and clients are going to make demands, and basically, it's not the ideal situation where you're able to just do the work that you really enjoy in the time that you want it. It's always going to be rush, and I think that's kind of true for a lot of industries, not just law. When there's someone chasing you to get things done, and you have so many different things moving at once, you really can't slow down very often and actually enjoy the work that you're doing, even if it's something that you really truly actually like to do. So that for me was something that I really don't miss.
To be honest, what I don't miss the most was probably all of the work aside from drafting. that's the best answer I can come up with.
I was choked on my tea. Yeah, you really didn't like the work all that much, huh?
I mean, I cared very much about, I think, learning. I did really enjoy learning, and I obviously wanted to always be responsible and do a good job, but I think once I learned past a certain point, I just found the work incredibly boring, and just a lot of it was not mentally stimulating. I think I think this goes across the board. Whether or not the work is intellectually stimulating will really depend on the task, your seniority, the practice area.
Yeah. No, that's true. And I think it's worth mentioning as well that I think from a very junior level, you often get a lot of those tasks that are really mechanical and not actually very interesting. Like, it's almost like data entry at times, and it's really just proofreading, all that kind of stuff. Which I actually kind of enjoy proofreading. So not to dig on proofreading or anything, but
I also enjoy proofreading.
Yeah. We're very interesting people. Holy shit.
I mean, I guess we still proofread. We just proofread like when one of us writes out a video script or outline, and then we still run red lines.
Yeah, that's true.
On each other's stuff.
That habit never goes away, yeah. Yeah, no, I get that though. I think there are some people that really just don't enjoy the work that much, and I think that's normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, talking about lifestyle, right? So, I mean, I have a pretty good one for this. I think the biggest change, the biggest difference, right, is I love eating and drinking. I love just going out for a casual drink. I love going out to enjoy, a spontaneous meal. One of the things that I definitely did enjoy when I was working as a lawyer was, I didn't really have to think too much about going out for a nice meal or going out for a couple drinks, right? And then cocktails in particular are something I really enjoy, given my background as a bartender. And it's one of those things that, even just having 2 or 3 drinks out can be prohibitively expensive. And it really sort of adds up when you're not really thinking about it. So I would say that's the biggest thing that I miss about
disposable income?
Disposable income, basically.
Yeah, no, actually, that was probably, like, to be honest, and I feel like I would really be lying if I said I did not miss the disposable income.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was also the first thing that I thought of, but you took that away from me.
I mean, I think it's true. I think a lot of people, it's called the golden handcuffs for a reason, right? And I think, specifically in our case, when we thought about quitting, we've mentioned in our videos before that we sort of had a 2-year runway where we were thinking about it, and we were trying to save as much money as possible, and basically, lowering our cost of living such that we're able to balance a lifestyle off of our savings without needing to sort of, scramble to make the same kind of income that we were making before. That said, I don't think I'd trade lifestyle for anything at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I think the flip side of that is, I miss the disposable income, but it was also making me miserable.
Yeah.
Not literally the income itself, but the lifestyle and the work. So I miss it, but I can't say I would go back for it.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I actually had quite a good long think about this, just to be as, honest as possible.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. So, okay, so I've taken the number one from you. So what is the number two thing that you miss the most?
I don't know if this is really lifestyle, but this is sort of work lifestyle, but I kind of miss having colleagues.
Yeah.
This is obviously provided that you get along with your colleagues. If you don't like your colleagues, then that's another story. But
yeah, actually, that's a really good point. I think that's probably tied for number one with me as well. I think that I ended up staying longer than I intended to at the firm that I was at because I really liked my colleagues. I had a really great relationship with my boss, still do. I got along with a lot of my colleagues, still meet up with them and stuff. I was at the firm's Christmas party just a few nights ago, and I think it's one of these things where the people that you interact with can really make a big difference in terms of the experience of work, for sure. And I think it could be one of the worst things about a workplace, but it could also be the best.
Yeah. I think that was something realistic that Partner Track did portray, Ingrid making really good friends in the office, because I also made really good friends in the office, and there's still people that I keep up with to this day.
Yeah.
And I think in a funny way, sometimes you bond with colleagues over some horrible case or transaction you're working on.
Yeah. No, that's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you not miss the most?
Yeah, that's easy. I think it's, and I think this is partially why a lot of people end up, actually leaving the profession, which is just the complete lack of agency over your own schedule and your own life, right? So I think back when we were working as lawyers, because it's such a client services dominated industry, right? It's a situation where your clients are always asking you to do things that whenever, they need things done, right? So you're never really off the clock. And I kind of explained this to someone in a way where it's if you're on a shift, you have X number of hours that you need to be working, but that concept doesn't really exist, right? So we used to have people ask us, hey, are you working overtime tonight? And I was like, that concept literally doesn't exist in a law firm, right? The concept of overtime just doesn't make any sense. I think that's kind of true for, again, a lot of professional services jobs or anything that's really service-oriented, period, Friends in marketing have the same thing when they have tight deadlines or when they have a client with something really urgent. You can't really say no to business, right? So that was the worst part for me in terms of the lifestyle, was you couldn't really plan things, and even when you did plan things, you always had to add the disclaimer of, I don't know that I can make this. There's no guarantee. I might have to work.
Yeah. I remember, I think in the first month after I quit, I remember we were invited to a wedding a few months later, and it was like a revelation to me that I could just say yes without having to qualify it. And I was like, oh, that's kind of bad if that's the case.
I still remember this because I messaged you and I said, hey, such and such are getting married at this time. And it was actually a work colleague, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, can you make it? And I remember you kind of just had this look, your eyes just kind of glazed over and you're like, I can just say yes? And that was an amazing experience, because for me too, it registered at that time. I was like, oh wow, this is actually a thing. It's actually possible to just make plans, It's tough. And I think for people saying, why don't you just take leave and stuff, it can be difficult to do that, right? Because if, let's say, you're on a file that you've been working on for several months, and then things just happen to ramp up around the time you want to take leave, really just, if you're a responsible person on that deal, it's really difficult to just unplug and walk away completely, right? You kind of have to be locked in still.
I think at least 50% of the time that I was technically on annual leave, I had to do something work related. If it wasn't a full work day, it was at least a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of the expectation too. The expectation isn't that when you're on annual leave, you're on annual leave at all.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, if you hand over a case to someone else, they'll have questions just because they haven't really been a part of the entire process, and they won't know as much as you know. So even if you hand it over to them and they're handling the day-to-day, they'll still need to contact you whenever they have questions, because you might be the only person that knows. If you're at that level where you're kind of running the transaction and the partner is sort of supervising, you know more about what's going on than the partner does in a lot of cases, right?
Yeah.
So being that point person means that you can't really switch off. And if you just tell them, screw it, I'm off, deal with it, that's not really acceptable.
Yeah,
right?
it would just be being irresponsible.
Yeah.
And it's no one's fault, it's just sort of the way things are.
Yeah.
I think it's quite difficult to escape this issue generally.
Yes, I think that's true. And I think, there are various things that influence it as well. I think it also depends on the size of your team. If you have a team that has a lot of people and is sort of staffed, at all different levels, then I think it's a bit easier to step away. But if you have transactions where it's just, a partner, a senior associate, and then a trainee or an associate or something, that's a lot harder, right? Because there's very few people on the deal. Even worse if it's just a partner and an associate, because then you can expect that the associate will be doing most of the work on the file, and you basically just can't really take leave. There's no one to really hand it over to in that case. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in no way we're disparaging the career. Obviously, it's still a good career, but there's just some realistic, pros and cons basically to keep in mind, which come with the lifestyle.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. We kind of landed on the same things there.
Yeah. Spontaneously.
Yeah. So we hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like, consider subscribing, and let us know in the comments if you enjoyed this new formatted video. And we'll see you guys in the next one.
Drafting argumentative documents, and I think I did enjoy. Oh, that your glass is steam up when you do that.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, quite a bit.
They were steamed up a little bit earlier, I think, too. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.